Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. Welcome back to part 2 of my series on growing lavender in the permaculture garden. Part 1 is in the description. It's about growing English lavender, and today I wanted to talk with you about growing 2 other kinds of lavender. The lavender in front of us is Spanish lavender, sometimes referred to as French lavender, although there's some confusion because sometimes English lavender is also referred to as French lavender. So the scientific name is Lavandula stochas. And in my part of the world, we call it Spanish lavender. So this lavender is different than the English lavender in that it is much less cold hardy. English lavender can handle zones 5 to 8. Spanish lavender is more zones 8 to 9, and if you have it in a sheltered location, zone 7. This lavender is about 6 or 7 years old. I have lost some Spanish lavenders in the winter before when it has gotten too chilly for them. So if it gets below that 15 degrees Fahrenheit, I need to cover it. Especially smaller lavenders. So this lavender, again, less cold hardy. Other things that differentiate it from English lavender is it doesn't have an aroma. So it doesn't have that typical lavender smell. Why grow it then? If it doesn't smell like lavender, can't use it for sachets, can't use it to add scent to salves or hair rinses or lotions or anything that you're making. There are a couple main reasons that I grow it. And the first reason is that it has such a nice architectural shape. So unlike the mounded shape of the English lavender, the Spanish lavender has a little bit more of a free-form, loose shape. The flowers themselves are very, very pretty. So as you can see, they have the flower head here, and at the top of it, it's like a little butterfly or a little wisp at the top of petals. So it's just a really nice look. And so it provides a beauty in the garden, whether it be a cottage garden, your xeriscaped garden, your permaculture garden. But as you can see, it's very early in the morning, and as the sun is coming up and temperatures are warming up a little bit more, the bees are starting to come out. This plant is a great pollinator attractor. It's a really good bee food. And unlike the English lavenders, which don't start to flower until June, this plant starts flowering in April, and the blossoms last an incredibly long time, and it blooms in succession. So with my English lavender, when it's done blooming, I can shear it back and get another round of blooming. With the Spanish lavender, you can see the blossoms are produced right along inside the new growth, and it's harder to come back and just clip it back. I prefer to come through and pinch off dead heads. This lavender, I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the variety because I got it so long ago, has gray foliage. I have a Spanish lavender with green foliage, so they don't all have to be gray. Growing conditions, just like the English lavender, this lavender needs poor soil, preferably rocky and sandy, full sun. It needs no fertilizing, no watering of any kind. Do not water this plant. You will get leaf spot. Once I've planted this plant, I leave it alone. You can see here, it is planted right up on concrete with very little soil, and it likes that situation. It likes a slightly sweet pH, so 7.5. So in Oregon, that does mean I plant it, I put wood ash in the hole, and every few years I put some wood ash around the base, about half a cup. I really like it in this plum guild because I needed something that would grow at the edge of the guild where I'm abutting the driveway and what used to be part of the driveway, which is now a new garden. And I needed something that I wouldn't have to worry about and that could spill over the concrete and soften that edge. And I also needed something that provided flowers earlier than the English lavender, earlier than the calendula, earlier than the lavender mist and the yarrow that are in this bed, earlier than the chives and mint that are in this bed. I really like the play of the gray foliage with the purple blossoms against the white lavender in the back, which is the green foliage and the white blossoms, and I love how it mixes in with the yellow of the calendula. So just a really pretty plant, great bee food. Okay, let's move on to the next kind of lavender, and I'm going to have to stand up for that. So far we've talked about English lavender, Lavandula angustifolia in the first video, and then the Spanish lavender. And now we're going to talk about a hybrid that I grow. So I'm going to pan over this way. Sorry about my car. We're up in this front bed against the house. It gets a lot of sun. My rosemary here, I have two rosemaries, one here. They're too happy here and they get a little aggressive. So in February, I had to hack them back off of this plant. So right now there are two of these plants in the front garden and they don't look as great as they should because the rosemary has been squashing them. But they're going to come back into their full shape as I continue to remove this rosemary and rehab the plants. So the last plant is a hybrid, like I said. It's called Lavandin. It is a cross between Lavandula angustifolia and Lavandula latifolia, which is Portuguese lavender. Latifolia means broad-leaved, angustifolia means narrow-leaved. So Lavandin in America is frequently sold as Dutch lavender, and I'm not sure why that's the name. I've also seen it mislabeled as French lavender. So this right here is Lavandin. It is a sterile hybrid, obviously, and it naturally occurs it occurs naturally in nature. And the reason that it's become a popular cultivar is because this hybrid produces very long, I'm going to break one off here, very, very long, pretty stems. And then it produces a flower with a stronger aroma. But that hybrid has much more camphor in it than your traditional lavender. So over here you can see some of my real lavenders. There's a real lavender right here, a true lavender right here. And then this Lavandin smells much stronger, so it makes it very good for using in sachets. It makes it very good as a insect deterrent. Does not make it so great as a culinary herb because it has that extra camphor in it and it has a much stronger smell. But it's made it very popular. So let me show you these stems, and I'm going to pick a regular lavender and we're going to compare them. Okay, so on my stepping stone here. Okay, so this is a regular lavender, and you can see that the blossoms are produced in little clusters down the stem. With Lavandin, they're usually produced, the spike, now keep in mind this is just starting to bloom. It's budding out, so these will get much bigger. So by the time it's blooming, it will be like this big. It has more of a conical shaped bud, and they're much closer together, and then one section down here. And then this is the main way you can differentiate. Look at the stem. So while this may end up being, depending on the variety, you may end up with 10, 20, 30 centimeters of stem. Lavandin, you end up with 50, 60 centimeters. It just keeps going and going. And the other way to differentiate is that farther down the stem, while English lavender has one stalk of flowers, Lavandin has 3. So a main stalk, and then farther down 2 side shoots that produce a smaller flower. So why grow lavandin in the garden? Stand up here. So I grow lavandin for multiple reasons. Like I said, it's a much better plant for an insect repellent. It has a lot more camphor in it and a much, much stronger aroma. It dries really nicely, so I use it in sachets. I make skate sachets and sachets that go in your shoes, keep them smelling fresh. And it works ideally for that. It has these long stems that if you were looking for a revenue stream, it makes a very beautiful cut, bundled flower for the farmer's market. Those long stems are really appealing. So in my experience, I found it sells better at a farmer's market than regular lavender, just more striking. And because it smells stronger, has not as good for culinary use. In terms of in the garden, we're not talking about an economic utilization of this plant. It blooms later, so you can see my lavenders here, which I've been starting to cut back this morning. I have more behind me. They're all budding out and just about to fully open their blossoms, which is why I got to get the rest of them cut back this morning. Lavandin, the buds are now much tighter. So while lavender blooms in June, lavandin starts to bloom in July, or the very tail end of June here in Oregon. So for me, I always am wanting that succession of foods for my bees. So it blooms later. It's taller. It's a larger plant. If you need something that takes up more space and has more pop to it, you want a lavandin. So just like with my English lavender, if I cut this back really hard, leave about 1 inch of green growth and shear off the whole plant, it will bloom again in September. I know some of the books say lavandin only blooms once a year, while you can get 2 rounds of blooms out of true English lavender. And for me, that hasn't been true. I have 3 lavandin plants, and all of them I can get a second round of blooming out of if I shear the whole plant off as soon as it starts to open. So I've gotten some questions about what it means to grow organically, and I also was witness to a really vigorous conversation in an organic gardening Facebook group about using hybrids. So I just wanted to clarify, as much as possible, I use open pollinated things, but I'm not opposed to using hybrid plants. Because something is hybridized, that doesn't make it a GMO, and I think there's been confusion about that. So again, this is a naturally occurring hybrid, where in nature 2 plants, the Portuguese lavender and the English lavender, have cross-pollinated, and they have produced a hybrid with hybrid vigor. This plant is sterile and cannot produce offspring. You have to grow it by cuttings to get new plants. Doesn't make it a genetically modified organism, doesn't make it so your garden is no longer organic if you grow lavandin. There's lots of occurring hybrids in nature, or human-derived hybrids, like mules, right? So a horse and a donkey make a mule. This is the same thing. English lavender and Portuguese lavender make lavandin. No reason to be concerned about growing it. I think it's a great plant for your garden. So anyway, so I hope that helped answer some of your questions about growing the different kinds of lavender. Again, in the first video, I cover English lavender. You can find the link below. And the conditions for growing lavandin and Spanish lavender are very similar. Hot, sunny, don't over-fertilize, don't water once established. You'll have a plant that produces for many years a good pollinator plant, a good economic plant, a plant that in permaculture stacks those functions really well, and a plant that in any garden is going to provide beauty and also thrive in locations where maybe other plants wouldn't do so well. So I hope that was helpful for you all. I will be back tomorrow with another video. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and please share it with your friends. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.